Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello, my name is Dr. Himanshu Tyagi and I am teaching this course on heat and mass transfer. Today we will be starting a new topic which is on heat exchangers. So, we will start the first part of heat exchangers today, but before we start, let us do a brief recap of what we have done in the last few lectures, which was related to boiling and condensation. So, we had looked at the fundamentals of boiling. So, I will skip this part. We looked at two different boiling regimes. So, this photograph shows very nicely the nucleate boiling and the film boiling which is taking place. We looked at the boiling curve, which is a very generalized curve which can be obtained for all different type of fluids, and it has four different regimes inside it, starting with the natural convection, then going on to nucleate boiling, and then moving from transition very rapidly into film boiling. So, this is what we had explained over here. Then after looking at details of pool boiling, we went on and looked at details of flow boiling. So, flow boiling is also very important because in real life applications lot of time the bulk motion of the fluid is there, and then the whole process starts from liquid entering on one side, the pipe is continuously heated and then we get vapor coming out from the other side. So, these type of boilings I had given examples can take place in power plant cycle, as well as, believe it or not, it takes place inside our air conditioning as well. So, if I am sitting in a well air conditioned room like this room over here, then what I can see is the evaporator which would be connected on the inside over there. So, then evaporation or boiling of that refrigerant is taking place. It kind of enters not exactly as pure liquid, somewhere in between, but we can assume in principle that pure liquid at very low temperature, if it comes and we expose it to the ambient conditions, so then that local boiling would take place and it would come out as saturated vapor. So, it is very interesting example. Then we had looked at the topic of condensation, where we started off with real life examples that we can see in our house, then examples from the nature, the condensation found by cloud. So, very beautiful clouds we see. Then we looked at the interesting concept of the contrails, which is the condensation trail appearing from the exhaust of the aircraft, and these are appear very beautiful. Sometimes we can stand and watch if some aircraft is going above us, then contrails we can see. These are also visible from the space sometimes if the weather permits. So, this is an image taken from the supplied by NASA. So, they have perhaps taken it from one of the satellites, and it shows those zones where lot of aircraft movement is there. So, lot of contrails are visible in those zones of busy air traffic. Then we looked into the details of condensation, and we looked at the film condensation as well as drop wise condensation, and it would appear that drop wise is much more lucrative because it is having heat transfer coefficient 10 times that of the film based condensation. However, it is very difficult to sustain it for long periods of time, because drop wise we can sustain initially, but later on everything becomes film condensation. And we looked at a complicated sort of equation over here, but I asked the students not to worry, just analyze it from a physics point of view, that what are the parameters that actually H is dependent on, like density and thermal conductivity, heat of vaporization, things like that. The thing which is very interesting is that we can see over here about 2 lakh value of H we can achieve for drop wise condensation, but of course, as I mentioned 2 or 3 times, it is very difficult to sustain it for long period of time. So, earlier on we were looking at convection, then we looked at both forced and natural convection, we looked at examples of phase change like boiling and condensation. With all that background, a natural transition now is towards heat exchangers. So, what exactly are heat exchangers? Where do we see them around? If from morning to evening we are walking around some places, do we see some heat exchangers? So, with that questions, I wanted to start today's lecture over here. Let us see a photograph of a typical vehicle or automobile. So, we can immediately realize that there is some big heat exchanger which is appearing over here. So, I can ask the students also, I think we have all seen it inside the front of the car, and we know the purpose that it is to cool the engine so that it does not overheat. So, this is the radiator of this particular car, and a clean image is also given over here. So, I can write that this is the radiator. So, similar type of heat exchanger. So, this is one of the commonest type that we can see around. Then we can look around that condenser evaporator in our air conditioner, especially inside the fridge. There is a lot of heat exchange taking place inside that freezer compartment. Then we can also look at technical type of heat exchanger. So, this is one type of a spiral heat exchanger, and we can imagine that on the first slide I had mentioned over here. I can go back that heat exchanger community, it is usually abbreviated with HXN. So, I can sometimes write, instead of writing full heat exchanger, I can write it is spiral heat exchanger over here. Then we will also look at some very interesting type of heat exchanger like the shell and tube type, which I can show the zoomed in image over here. So, this is one fluid entering on this side. So, this is the blue fluid which is entering, and this is known as the shell side fluid in. It travels like this over here. Maybe I should pick a new color. So, it enters over here, travels over here, 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 and gets out from here. So, this is the shell side in, shell side out. We will talk in detail why do we call it shell side, then maybe I will pick orange color over here. So, this is the tube side in, and these fluids will thermally interact with one another. Let us say the tube side in could be some sort of oil which is going in, the shell side in could be just water which is going over here. And essentially what we want to do is exchange the heat among these two type of fluids. So, instead of beginning it with very complicated design or very complicated analysis, let me start with a fresh blank slide over here and look at somehow the perhaps very simplest design of heat exchanger, because whenever we are starting new topic, let us start with very simple example. So, we want to look at simple, one of the simplest design of heat exchanger. So, heat exchanger is used to exchange heat between two different fluids. So, let us say what are those fluids? In some pipe over here, hot water is flowing, okay, or in my instead of hot water I am taking that oil is hot over here, perhaps at 80 degrees centigrade, and I want to transfer its heat to a cold source of water which is going over here. So, relatively cold water is going over here at 20 degrees centigrade. So, what essentially we want to do is, we do not want the mixtures, the two fluids to come in physical contact with one another. What is the reason for that? There could be some reaction which could take place. If these are things which can mix, then they will mix together, we will not be able to separate them. There could be other issues as well, that one could be a very costly fluid, a very sensitive fluid, it can get oxidized or corroded. So, there has to be some sort of a physical barrier between these two fluids, but still we want the thermal interaction between the two fluids to take place, which means I want the hot oil to transfer some of its energy through heat to the cold fluid and vice versa. In order to do that, that is why I wrote this word simple over here. One of the simplest way I can do that is, I can take a tube in tube arrangement. What I mean by that is, I have a smaller tube over here which is present inside a bigger tube over here. So, both are of the same length, but I have some sort of a d inner over here. I am representing it by di, and the outer diameter is do. Okay. If this type of arrangement is made of some sort of a metallic material having good thermal conductivity, let us say both these materials are either aluminum or they are copper. So, they will separate, they will keep the two flows separate. So, let us say inside the smaller pipe oil could be flowing, right? And in the outer annular region, which I can show with the shading over here. So, maybe in the outer annular region, I will shade it with the orange zone over here. In the outer annular region, we can have water be flowing over there. So, I do not want oil and water to mix with one another, right? But I want them to interact with one another thermally. That is why I have chosen the material of the pipe in such a way that they are metals having very good thermal conductivity like copper or aluminum. I can draw the schematic of this back over here. So, maybe I will erase this particular part. So, we remember the water was at 20 degrees, oil is at 80 degrees. So, the whole thing I can draw in schematic form over here. So, this is the inner pipe and this is the annular region, and I can show the center line as well over here. So, maybe oil, because it is hot, I will show with the red color. So, oil enters over here. So, oil goes in, it comes out over here, oil comes out over here. When oil is going in, its temperature is known, it is very high. So, I will say T oil in is 80 degrees. Then water, because it is slightly colder, I will show it with the blue color over here. So, in the annular region, which we have shown with the orange color over here, this is the annular region. So, everywhere will be water. And inside the inner pipe, everywhere there is oil. So, oil is going over here. I hope this construction is clear, because all the lecture will be based on the understanding of these two constructions of the pipe. So, please understand it nicely. This part I will erase over here. Okay. So, we have water going in over here and then water comes out over here. So, this is one of the simplest forms of a heat exchanger with just some push of the flow which is required, which means I can put very small pumps, one for the oil, one for water, which is just pushing very nicely the flow through these particular pipes. And I also know the length of the pipe. So, length is known and the inner diameter, outer diameter of these pipes are known, the mass flow rates of water and the mass flow rates of oil is also known to me. And what I want to do in this particular case is I want to do a thought experiment that what is going to happen to the temperature of each of these particular fluids at length L. So, here I will write x equals to L, at this point I will write x equals to 0. How am I defining x? So, from here this is my x axis over here. I forgot to write that water, when it is entering, its temperature was 20 degrees centigrade, okay. Which means I can come back to this particular plot over here and I can start making some dots over here. So, I am going to make a y scale. This is at 20 degrees, 40 degree, 60 degree and 80 degree. And why have I chosen these numbers? Because initially my oil, which I am representing with red color, it is at 80 degrees. I do not know its temperature at x equals to L, but what are the guesses that I can make? Because it is flowing inside the inner pipe, whose surface are being cooled by the water which is flowing outside that pipe, because water is flowing in the annular region, which means some sort of a heat transfer is going to take place. Can I show it with the green arrow in this particular slide over here? So, the heat transfer is taking place in this direction. Oil is continuously losing heat to the copper pipe without knowing what is on the outside, and copper pipe knows on both sides that on one side of me there is cold water which is flowing, on the other side of me hot oil is flowing. It is just a conduit, it is just a path through which heat is actually flowing, which means temperature of oil is going to drop. By how much I do not know. So, I am just going to draw a guess over here. This is just a qualitative figure. So, what I am going to do is draw this kind of a curve, and this is the oil outlet temperature, and this is something I do not know, and this is something I want to learn with the help of this particular chapter. So, there will be series of lectures which will be dedicated to heat exchangers, and we will try and figure out based on the design parameters, based on the thermal analysis. This is a very important question. What is the outlet temperature of the oil? Is it a function of length? Is it just thermodynamic calculation? Is it also a function of H? So, these are very interesting questions we will ask, but let us go slowly. Now, water starts at 20 degrees over here. So, I will make a blue circle over here, and now let us say, because it is being heated by all these green arrows, right. We can see on the top side of the left over here I am highlighting these green arrows. So, which means this blue curve should probably go up over here. How much it goes, that I do not know, but it will increase, and I am putting this arrow just to illustrate the flow direction. So, the red arrow given over here and the blue arrow given over here, they just represent the flow direction. So, oil is flowing from left to right, water is also flowing from left to right. What is the final temperature of water? I can write it Tw at the outlet, and this temperature I do not also know. So, what we have drawn over here, although I started off with a simple name that the simple exchangers, what we have drawn is something technically known as the parallel flow heat exchanger. So, let me write that down over here. Let me pick a new color, maybe with this color. So, whatever we have drawn over here, technically it is known as the parallel flow heat exchanger. And as the name suggests, and we can see with the help of these arrows, that the flow is taking place in the parallel direction. Both are going from left towards the right, right. And this is the 2-dimension sketch, the side view of that particular schematic, and this is the 3-dimensional view. So, we have got an understanding that with the length L, inner diameter di, do, how are things actually working over here. But we have not done any thermodynamic calculation, neither we have done any heat transfer calculation, because we want to start slow just to get a feel of what is the new thing that we will study in this topic. Let us try to do one thing. Let us try and see what happens if we reverse the directions, because it is only the copper pipe which is interacting thermally. It is the conduit through which heat is flowing. It does not prevent in any way I can reverse the direction of the flow. What I want to do by that is, I want to keep all the thermodynamic conditions the same, but I want to do it in this way, that the inner tube, the fluid goes like this. In the annular region or the outer tube, the fluid goes like that, without mixing with one another. So, these are fluids which are going in opposite direction, but they are not mixing with one another. Okay? Why do not we do that? And the technical name for that would be counter flow. So, this type of heat exchanger will be known as the counter flow heat exchanger. And what I am going to do in counter flow heat exchanger is, I will keep the same fluids. So, my oil will be hot, water will enter at a low temperature. So, I will call it cold. So, let me draw the center point over here. So, this is the inner pipe. So, maybe I will erase the side parts over here, sorry. And because the oil is hot, I will draw with red arrows. So, oil flows in the inside over here. So, I will say oil inlet, oil outlet, and in the surrounding annulus on both sides or on all sides of this particular pipe, I have that blue water, because it is cold, flowing in the opposite direction. So, then cold water enters over here, cold water in, and from here water goes out. Okay. Does it make sense? So, this is the oil region which I am dotting with red color, and this is the water region which I am dotting with blue color. Now, what I want to do is draw the same type of temperature profile as we had done for the previous case. So, I want to plot T as a function of x for both the fluids and the numbers I am going to put once again. Oil inlet was at 80 degrees temperature and the water inlet was at 20 degrees centigrade. Okay. Now, how do I do that? Let me create that another grid over here. So, this is 80 degree, 40 degree, 60 and 20. So, I will just put the numbers over here 20 degree, 40 degree, 60 and 80 degrees. Okay. So, I will put the x axis as well. So, this is where x is equals to 0 and x is positive in the right hand side direction. Oil enters at 80 degree at x equals to 0. So, let me show that the temperature is going to drop like this. Why? Because oil is going to lose heat on all sides to water over here. So, its temperature is going to dip as it is actually moving forward inside the pipe in the positive x direction. I think that is pretty clear. The question is how much will it dip? Can it go something like this? And that length is over here. So, this is x equals to L and this is x equals to 0. Can it go something like this where the exit temperature is 35 degrees? We will ask that question. So, I will just put a question mark over here. Is it possible to have oil exit temperature 35 degrees? What about the blue fluid, which is water, which entered at 20 degrees over here? So, water was here at 20 degrees. I forgot to put the red arrow. Let me go ahead and put this. So, oil is going like this. What about water? So, water temperature has to increase as it is going, but will it increase like this? Will it increase like this? Will it increase like this? Or will it increase like this? So, if I can put case numbers over here, this is case 1, case 2, case 3 and case 4. So, if I want to ask students that we are trying to play around with the temperature profile. So, we know that the oil, once it is losing heat along with distance, its temperature goes down. When water is coming from the other side, because it is cold, it is interacting with the hot copper plate. Interesting thing is oil and water do not really know who is on the other side. They just feel, oil feels that there is a cold fluid because it feels a cold copper surface next to it, and water feels a hot copper surface next to it. So, it is the boundary conditions eventually which will tell us that how that heat transfer is actually taking place, how much it is taking place. Now, the question is that will the water temperature rise to what water will rise to eventually what temperature? Will it be case 1, will it be case 2, can it be case 3 and case 4? So, I think if I ask this question to students, perhaps they may answer in this way that we do not exactly know which case 1, 2 or 3 it will be, but we know for sure it can't be case number 4. So, why is that answer correct? Which means I can put a cross over here, it can never be case number 4. Which means the exit temperature of water, if let us say according to the scale it is 90 degree, it can never rise its own temperature more than the highest point temperature of the whole system. So, the hottest oil which enters inside the system is at 80 degrees, which means we have kind of answered ourselves that perhaps the maximum temperature that can be achieved over here is in this particular zone. Which means, if the maximum temperature of water, if somebody tells me it is 78 degrees centigrade, we will have to figure out in a little while, but thermodynamics does not prevent it. So, thermodynamics says yes, it can be 78, it can also be 75, but it can never exceed 80, it cannot be 85 or 90. So, why do not I go and then erase that particular portion, because that is not possible. So, we should not create confusion over here, but 1, 2 and 3, these cases all of them could be possible depending on which parameter. So, this is what we want to study over here, and I can give a glimpse over here that it will depend on the mass flow rate of water, specific heat of water, mass flow rate of oil, specific heat of oil. Can it also depend on the internal and external heat transfer coefficients? Because believe me, this is what is happening is the forced convection is taking place on two sides. Inside the inner pipe, Oil is losing heat through forced convection to the surface, and then that heat transfer is going through the outer heat transfer coefficient to water. So, I am not trying to make it complicated, do not worry. Very slowly we will study all these concepts over here. So, just by playing around with these curves, I wanted to, in the form of asking questions, just to analyze that what could be the maximum temperature that we could achieve. I hope that particular point is clear with these examples. Similarly, if I had asked, I did not ask that earlier, but if I had asked what is the minimum temperature that oil could have reached. In other words, if I go back to the slide and try and draw over here hypothetically, can the oil reach 10 degrees temperature? How can it reach 10 degree? At least graphically I can show over here. 10 degree will be this dot over here. Can I draw this red line and put an arrow over here? So, again that same thermodynamic law will be violated, that its temperature can't go below the minimum temperature of the system. So, already minimum temperature of cold water is 20 degree, which means this oil can itself go little bit more than 20 degree. So, oil we can cool to maybe 22 degree, 21 degree, even 20.001 degree, but we can't make it 19, 18 and 17. So, I think again students perhaps already knew that, but I wanted to bring that formally to their mind over there. We go back to the first case, which was the parallel flow heat exchanger, compare it with the next case, counter flow heat exchanger. Maybe instead of going back and forth, I can quickly draw for parallel flow heat exchanger. So, this was 80 degrees for oil, 20 degrees for water, and over here somewhere in middle we will get over here depending on specific heats. And later on we will figure out it, instead of these two red curves we can also have something like this. This is also okay, and we can also have something like this, that oil goes from 80 to 78, water goes very high over here. So, in all these three cases, the ratios of m dot w, Cpw and m dot oil, Cp oil. So, these are the ones which will play a role in determining which of these cases is actually going to be achieved. So, right now just to introduce the topic, I am just exploring all the possibilities which are going around over here. I hope this particular point is clear. Now, let me again draw for, okay, let us go to a new type of a heat exchanger now, and so let me put some numbers over here. So, this was the first type of heat exchanger that we looked at. The first type was the parallel flow heat exchanger. Then we looked at the counter flow heat exchanger. So, I will put a number 2 over here. I think I will put it down a little bit over here. So, you can see this is the second type. In the same type, maybe we can also introduce some sort of phase change heat exchanger. Can phase change take place in heat exchanger? Phase change heat exchangers. I can put a S over here and call it heat exchangers. I will call it number 3 over here. What it means by phase change? So, let me give an example. So, now I am going to talk about air conditioner, which I had talked about a little bit earlier. So, if we are talking about the evaporator inside the air conditioner, and let me go ahead and draw the TS diagram for that. So, TS, I think thermodynamic engineers remember, is the temperature entropy diagram. So, this is the dome of the refrigerant. Generally in ACs I can see these days companies could be using R134A or different type of refrigerants also. So, we see over here. So, I can draw the cycle something like this. So, we start with state 1, state 2 is compressor, 2 to 3 condenser, 3 to the 4 throttling valve, and 4 to 1 is the one for which we have paid huge amount of money to the AC, that we wanted it to cool the room. So, that is happening from 4 to 1, and that is what this evaporator section is. So, 4 to 1 we are calling the evaporator. So, what happens during the evaporator section? Again it is kind of complicated, but if I want to just simplify it for the concept. So, the concept suggests that we can simplify it, assume it to be a pipe over there. surrounded by the annular region. In reality, it is not like that, but just to explain some concept of phase change in the context of heat transfer, I would like to take the liberty of making this slight deviation over here. So, let us say my refrigerant enters over here. So, refrigerant name is R134A and it enters here at this state number 4, like we can see on the TS diagram, right. So, I will put a state is the thermodynamic state. It comes out at thermodynamic state 1, 34A, it comes out at thermodynamic state 1. Now, why is it going from state 4 to state 1? So, those people who are familiar with thermodynamics, essentially what we are doing over here is we are adding heat to this refrigerant. So, this is the heat addition term Q dot at constant pressure, because I can draw the constant pressure line over here, it will extend like this over here and then over here and then over here. And that is exactly what is happening in this particular pipe. It is flowing at constant pressure or almost at constant pressure, not huge pressure loss over there. And what we are trying to do is we are trying to add heat to it. So, let me add some arrows which represent a lot of heat flux in terms of watts per meter square I am giving to it. How can I give some fluid heat? I can put it in a heat exchanger with some hot air coming in. So, let us say hot air is coming in over here in red arrows, it is going out over there. Hot air is coming in over here, hot air, and then it is coming out over there. So, let me again put some numbers over here. If refrigerant R134A entered at 10 degree, because phase change is taking place, it comes out again at 10 degree. Just like boiling, before and after liquid vapor, everything remains at 100 degrees in the equilibrium. During that process, during evaporation also over here, our refrigerant, whether it was liquid or liquid plus vapor or vapor, it would remain at 10 degrees in the ideal case over here. And hot air which is entering, I will write in red color over here, maybe hot air entered at 30 degrees centigrade. Now, because of these orange arrows or the red arrows, hot air is actually giving its heat away to R134A, which is absorbing that heat and evaporating itself. That is how R134A is able to raise its own internal energy. So, air temperature has to decrease at this particular point at this red dot. Air temperature cannot remain 30 degrees. So, let us put some number over there, maybe it has come down to 15 degrees. So, I have just put some 4 numbers over here, maybe I will circle it in yellow color. I think students can see what I am trying to do over here. This is the first temperature 10 degree, second temperature 10 degree, third temperature 30 degree, fourth temperature 15 degree. Now, again what I want to do, like in the previous slide, I want to draw this type of a temperature profile, because what I have drawn is another simple heat exchanger where phase change is taking place. So, isn't it very nice that in a very simple case we are trying to understand that even if phase change is taking place, what is the type of analysis that we can do in the preliminary sense. So, let us try and see that. Okay. Now, I will draw with the blue color R134A, because this I am considering cold. So, both temperatures are 10 degrees. So, this dot is at 10 degree and at the exit also it is 10 degree. So, I will put 10 degree here, just connect them with the solid line. So, it is a horizontal line, throughout the temperature remains same 10 degrees. What happens to the air, which I am showing with red color? Air enters at higher temperature. So, it is 10 here, 20 here, 30 degree, air enters here at 30 degree. Okay. And it is exiting at 15 degrees. So, 15 is somewhere over here, which means initially its temperature will drop much more faster, later on its temperature is not that fast over here. Now, I can show that air is going in this direction with the red arrow, and I can show that R134A is going in this direction. So, what I have shown with the red and blue arrow again is a very good example of a heat exchanger, and this is a special case where phase change is taking place. And I also know the direction of phase change, that some sort of evaporation is taking place or boiling is taking place, that liquid is getting converted into vapor. Now, some questions I can ask based on these, because 3 temperature profiles I have drawn. Should I give some time over here? I hope the concept is clear to students, right? I hope I am not going too fast. Let us recap in case I am going fast. The first example that we looked here, maybe I will put it in yellow color over here, was this parallel flow heat exchanger. This was number 1, where both the fluids, none of them is changing any phase, both are going in the same direction. I am calling them parallel flow, and I put some typical temperatures over here. One thing I forgot to do is, I can also define a delta T over here. So, delta T is something which is temperature difference between the fluid 1 F1 minus fluid 2. The only thing is that this delta T itself is changing with distance, you can see, right. Initially it was large, then smaller and then smaller. Let us go to number 3. Here also delta T very small here, medium here, large here. So, delta T is changing. It is perhaps in this particular case, and if I consider case 2 of the counter flow heat exchangers, then I can say that delta T here maybe it is kind of constant almost, but not necessary. So, all these things eventually, today we are not going to go into that detail, but today I am just trying to summarize that what are the type of heat exchangers, what are the different concepts. So, I am kind to provide a overview of what we are doing over here, just to make it interesting students, so that they can anticipate that what are the type of calculations we will be doing. So, this is one good example of phase change heat exchanger. Can we look at another type? Of course, in which reverse is taking place, that instead of going from liquid to vapor, where we are boiling it or evaporating it, can it be the other way around? And I think we have looked at it very recently in the last lecture, where we are talking about boiling and condensation. So, in the air conditioning itself, as shown in this particular TS diagram, now I can focus the attention of student on this TS diagram from 2 to 3. So, if I ask them what is happening 2 to 3, so those who have studied thermodynamics can immediately tell this is actually the condenser component of the air conditioner. So, we are condensing the refrigerant R134A. Technically speaking, it was initially at superheated condition, then it cooled down at constant pressure to saturated vapor, then finally it is cooled down to 0.3 at saturated liquid. So, can I draw that thing over here? But I am not going to draw from 2 to 3, I am going to draw from 2 prime to 3. So, 2 prime is the saturated vapor and 3 is the saturated liquid. So, let me go ahead and draw this thing, and this thing is something, why am I giving example? Because all our homes these days, all offices, schools, institute, usually many of them, even public transport buses, they have air conditioning present these days. So, I think this is something we all can see around us. So, I will give the example of AC condenser. So, this one is phase change heat exchanger 3. So, this is 3A and this is 3B. So, we have looked at 3-4 type of heat exchangers now. So, what are some numbers I can put over here? Okay. So, again let me draw it first. So, this is the inner pipe in which R134A is entering. It is again coming out from there. So, this is inlet, this is outlet of R134A. Okay. And here should I draw it with blue arrow like I have drawn earlier, or should we draw it with red arrow? Which type of fluid do you think it is? So, because it is condensing, it is losing heat, it is the one which itself is hot and it need another fluid to dump its heat. So, if you are standing outside a building, let us say, and you see some sort of a air conditioning unit which is throwing lot of heated air towards you, which means we are standing in front of a condenser, and that condenser is dumping the heat from the R134A to the air surrounding it, dumping it in the atmosphere, which means I have to draw according to my notation with red arrow, because this is the hot fluid over here. Okay. And then in the surrounding zone around it, I am going to draw that in the outer annulus of this big pipe over here, that air is entering. So, this I will draw with blue arrow, because it is going to be cold than this refrigerant. So, air enters inlet of air over here, and then air comes outlet over here. So, let me pick some typical numbers and then try and put over there. So, refrigerant, just some rough numbers I am putting over here. Enters at 60 degree, comes out at 60 degree, but it entered as saturated vapor in this state 2 prime, and it came out as saturated liquid at state 3. So, I am just focusing on that phase change part. What temperature do you think air comes in? So, we are talking about summer. Summer air temperature cannot be less than 40 degree during afternoon. So, 40 degree is cold over here, just imagine that condenser itself temperature is high. So, for it 40 degree is actually cold, then it will take that cold air relatively speaking and then heat it to a particular temperature. Just let us for the sake of simplicity call it 50 degree over here. So, if I want to draw the temperature profile for this case over here again, so this is my x axis, this is x equals to 0, this x equals to L, because that is the length of the heat exchanger. So, let us draw with red ink first R134A. So, here it is 60 degrees at this point, 60 degree to this point. So, this is R134A, throughout temperature is 60 degree, right. And this point is x equals to L, this is x equals to 0. Now, I can choose another color in blue and then try and show over here that what would happen to the air temperature. So, if this is 60, maybe 40 is over here, this is 50 degree. So, it enters at 40 degree, it has to come out at 50. Gradually, initially it will gain lot of heat and then slowly that heat will become less and less. So, it becomes from 40 degree to 50 degree over here, and this I can call as air, right. Now, here again I am interested in figuring out the delta T. So, we have looked at 4 type of heat exchangers. Let me summarize. The first one was parallel flow, then we looked at counter flow, then we have looked at 2 examples of counter flow. In both phase change is taking place, and in all these, why am I asking the students this question, that give me value of delta T, and I am trying to highlight that delta T actually is changing with distance. So, this I am asking always, because we will learn very soon that the very powerful equation that we can use in this particular chapter is related to delta T. So, I think students are familiar with seeing H come in this equation, that I should have written it like this, H A delta T. But now, what I want to do is, I want to make it slightly complicated, not the equations, but I want to analyze the heat exchangers in more detail, which means I want to go from simple into complex. And in order to learn the complexity, and then U is defined as the overall heat transfer coefficient. Overall heat transfer I will abbreviate with HT, and coefficient, COE coefficient. So, instead of using this relationship over here, we are going to be using the relationship over here. And now, you can understand that if I somehow get the value of U, which is the overall heat transfer coefficient, then my next worry would be that what is the value of delta T, which is the temperature between the 2 fluids that I need to apply. If both the curves were parallel, what do I mean by that? If both the curves were like this, the red one comes down from here to here, that is the hot fluid coming from here to here, and the cold one goes from here to there. I think in this case, we can clearly see that delta T is a constant, because delta T here, maybe if it is 10 degrees, then throughout it is 10 degree. So, this is a special case that we will also look at. In counter flow, many times we can look at this type of situation, but other than this special case, in parallel flow we can never have delta T constant. In phase change, whether it is the heating case or the condensing or the evaporating case, we can never have delta T constant, because one line is going to be horizontal, the other one is going to have a steep curve. So, we will figure out some ways, and to summarize that particular thing, let me write over here that there are 2 unique ways in which we can do thermal analysis because this is what we want to do. First step was to figure out the functioning of heat transfer, look at some simple examples, try and figure out where do we see heat exchangers around us. Once we have looked at that, then we want to go into too much detail, so that we can analyze and further design heat exchangers ourselves. In order to do, we need to perform thermal analysis of heat exchangers. And two main methods that we will study in this particular chapter, one is the log mean temperature difference method, one is the epsilon NTU method. So, I will write it again. This one is LMTD, the other one is epsilon NTU method. And whatever questions I am raising today in this lecture over here, all of them, students do not need to worry, all these questions will be answered once we are looking at first technique and then the second technique. We will be able to figure out lot of these things. So, the step that we will start with is the definition of U. This is something that we will look at, and its units is similar to H. It is known as watts per meter square, and it is known as the overall heat transfer coefficient. Okay. So, I just wanted to present these 3 or 4 examples just to illustrate the point that what is the functioning of a heat exchanger in a simple way. How do we look at 2 or 4 different temperatures, the inlet and outlet of the hot and cold part, how does the flow take place, whether it is same direction or opposite direction, and I think I have talked about it quite enough. So, now students will have good idea. Now, I can look at the next step. So, let us look at the fresh slide over here, and what we want to look at is the concept of U. What exactly it is? In order to look at that, just remember the units over here, watts per meter square Kelvin. I think we already written here. I made a mistake. It is watts per meter square per Kelvin. So, please correct it. Sorry about that. Now, what we want to do is, let us look at the heat exchanger in more detail. Then we will be able to figure out what this U quantity is. So, we are considering the pipe type heat exchanger, one pipe inside the other pipe over there. Okay. Now, what I want to do is, I will call that outer pipe P out, and this is the inner pipe. I want to now focus on the inner pipe over here. I want to focus on the inner pipe. Let us focus on this. And why I want to focus on this inner pipe is because it is the one which is perhaps playing one of the most crucial role, because the cold fluid is entering over here, and I can draw the hot fluid is entering over there, hot fluid. So, this is kind of like the border between two states or two districts or two entities. So, this is the one which plays a very important role. Now, students may ask, why does not the other border play a role, this one outer? It is because in reality the heat exchangers which are taking the heat which is being exchanged between two of the fluid, on the outer surface of the heat exchanger, we would ideally like to have insulation on all sides. So, this outer pipe we will cover with insulation, because whether the fluid is hot or cold, on the inside also on all sides we will put insulation, which means technically speaking, I mean in a simple sense, the outer pipes material does not play that big a role, because ultimately we are going to apply adiabatic boundary condition over there, because we do not want that hot or cold fluid to unnecessarily lose it to the ambient, unless in that condition where we are already dumping heat. For instance, if you look at the condenser outside which is placed, the unit which is placed outside, you do not see any insulation over there, because the fluid that we are trying to heat, it is the air itself. In those special cases we do not put it, but in general we will definitely put it over there, which gives us the main focus on this particular inner pipe, because this material is very, very important. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is we use a very high thermal conductivity material to make this inner pipe. So, usually we can use copper or aluminum. Now, let us focus on this inner pipe in more detail, which means I am going to zoom in and then draw that particular pipe in more detail. So, let me draw it like this. So, this is something I am drawing is just the inner pipe, I am trying to show its thickness. So, this red thing I am showing over here, which means this zone which I am dotting over here, if this material of the inner pipe is copper, so all this thing is made of copper. So, I can write over here. So, this is copper Cu, and the fluid which is flowing, one fluid is flowing on one side over here. So, fluid is flowing over here and the other fluid is flowing on the other side. Now, I bring the attention back of the students to one of the chapters that we had studied very early in this particular course, where we had talked about the thermal resistance network. So, students, remember, this is something we had studied in the conduction portion of the class, and little bit we have looked at the convection also, but let me try and draw the thermal resistance network across this particular copper pipe. So, what I mean by that is, if I know the temperature in the outer pipe, let me show over here, this is the outer pipe, and I know the temperature of the inner pipe over here. Will I draw it red color, T inner. Can I show it like this here? So, I want to draw the thermal resistance network between this temperature and this temperature. Ti is the inner temperature, To is the outer temperature over here, and I will have to put two more dots over here. Why? Let me just show in a little while. So, essentially what I am doing is I am drawing this thermal resistance network, first resistance, resistance number 2, then the third resistance, and what are these red dots? This is the temperature of the inner fluid, the first temperature, the last one temperature of the outer fluid. And let us talk in terms of resistance. This first resistance I will call as R1, then this one is resistance R2. What is this resistance in between? So, the resistance of the copper wire, we can talk about the resistance of the wall or the resistance of the solid, which means the total resistance that we are talking about over here is going to come out to be simply R1 plus R wall plus R2. So, I hope students revise and recall that particular portion where convective heat transfer, conduction heat transfer, we can all convert into resistances. So, if I want to talk in terms of R1, and here I add certain parameters in addition to T1, I know the heat transfer coefficient inside is Hi and outside it is Ho. Okay. In addition, I know the geometry of this particular copper tube in such a way that the inner radius is Ri and the outer radius given over here is Ro. The length of this particular pipe is L. Knowing all these geometries, can I ask the student one question, that what is the value of R1? So, R1 is expression, I think students can tell immediately, it will be 1 by Ha. And I want to be more explicit, I want to be more exact. So, which H are we talking about according to this diagram? I think we have to put a subscript I. We are talking about the inner side, because if you look over here, Ri is for the inner side, right? Hi, and we will talk in the area also, inner wall area of the copper tube, which means if I can use the orange color over here, we are talking about this area, inside area over here, isn't it? And when we are talking about that outer area over here, that it will become AO, outer area. And this thing we will need very quickly, because in R2 value I will have to write, it will be also 1 upon HA, but which subscript should I put over here? I will put H outer and A outer, which means both resistances R1, R2 look similar, both are 1 divided by HA, but H values and A values will be slightly different. What about the R wall value? If it were a parallel wall, then I think perhaps we could have written L by Ka. If it was a wall something like this, you remember, in that the conduction term is very easy to find the resistance in a plane wall. but here it is not a plane wall, so let me cross it. It is a cylindrical wall, is not it? So, in the cylindrical wall, the expression we can write from memory or by looking at that particular chapter is d outer divided by d inner. So, what are these ratio of diameters? So, these are the diameters, yeah, these are these, or I can write in terms of radius also, because d outer divided by d inner is same as r outer divided by r inner divided by 2 pi k l. So, this whole thing will be the conduction resistance, where K is the thermal conductivity of copper, because we are assuming this inner wall is made of copper, inner pipe. Okay. Now, what we want to do is, we want to of course, please remember all this slide we have started because of one concept. That concept was, we wanted to figure out what is the value of u, or what, how we actually define u. U is the overall heat transfer coefficient, right. And we have started all this process for that, but we are reaching the end of this particular lecture. So, details we will look in the next lecture, but before I leave, maybe what I want to do is write that particular expression down. So, what I am going to do is, I am going to write something like q dot. In one way, I can write q dot is the current, which is voltage difference divided by resistance. So, voltage difference is delta T, resistance is R total. In other words, I will write it like this. This one I will equate to overall heat transfer coefficient into delta T. I think till now, for now I will stop over here, but when we meet in the next lecture, when we look at the second part of the heat exchanger lecture, we will continue from this point forward. And before we leave, let me go ahead and look at very briefly what are the things that we have covered today. So, we started off with a very simple example of heat exchanger that we see in our real life. So, I started with this radiator example, then we saw another figure of this. We looked at some more details of different type of heat exchangers. So, spiral, and this is the spiral one over here, and shell and tube over here. This we will look in more detail later on. I wanted to start off with a very simple concept. So, the first case that we looked is one of the simplest heat exchanger, parallel flow heat exchanger, and I think I spent a lot of time. So, students do not need to be reminded about that. So, counter flow heat exchanger was number 2, and here we saw very interesting cases where temperatures can reach very high, very low values. Then we looked at 2 practical examples of evaporator and condenser where phase change is actually taking place. Then I started talking in terms of delta T with the motivation behind of u. So, we wanted to figure out how would that actually look like. So, u equation expression we have to figure out over here. So, with that idea in behind, we were trying to calculate the overall resistance of the inner pipe, which is some very important parameter. So, I think for now we will stop over here. Once we meet in the next lecture, we will continue forward from this slide onward. Thank you very much.